The video you're about to watch chronicles the origins of the Baton Rouge Metro Airport. Things were quite different back in the early 40s. The United States had not yet entered World War II, but was preparing just the same. I was just a child back then, but Harding Field fascinated me and became a lifelong passion. It's a riveting story.
In the summer of 1939, Baton Rouge was in the process of choosing a site about 9 miles north of the city for a new airport. The current location on Goodwood Boulevard was just too small and dangerous to handle larger planes. The area off Plank Road would be its new home. With all the plans approved, construction got underway about a year later, but then the U.S. Army came calling. With few air bases in the South, they needed the location for pilot training. It was leased to the U.S. government in December of 1940 and was first called the Baton Rouge Army Airfield. On April 1, 1941, Lieutenant Colonel Leonidas Kuntz became the first base commander. But the airfield had another very important mission: to protect the chemical plant corridor up and down the Mississippi River. The rumor then was that the Esso refinery was Hitler's #1 target. By the summer of '41, the base was really taking shape and was officially dedicated in September. But, needing a name, submissions from local organizations ended up on the colonel's desk. Although it became Harding Field, other names provided some competition. One was George Mustache, who flew the first city-to-city air mail route in the U.S. from Baton Rouge to New Orleans in 1912. But on January 23, 1942, the base was officially named Harding Field after Lieutenant William W. Harding, a pilot from Shreveport, who was killed during pilot training in 1936. His plane burst into flames and all aboard perished, but he was able to steer clear of other aircraft and limit the loss of life. The effect of having an air base in Baton Rouge was enormous. The economy was booming, millions of dollars were pouring into the city, and jobs were everywhere, many of them on the base itself. To free up the soldiers for more important work, the Army created the 9th Sub-Depot and employed more than 500 civilians. Many of them were women who worked in administration, maintenance, and supply. Civilians were also hired as mechanics, carpenters, parachute riggers, truck drivers, and hospital staff. While Baton Rouge residents were going to the base, the soldiers were going to town. With money to burn, many of them found their way to downtown, where they spent their money on the pretty girls. Because Baton Rouge was considered such a friendly town, many of them came back after the war, married, and settled down. With up to 10,000 troops on base at times, Harding was a thriving city unto itself. There were 28 two-story barracks housing 63 men each, but thousands more slept in tents on the base. The hospital complex included 12 buildings, and there were 7 mess halls. They had their own newspaper, the Echelon, which reported stories of local and national interest, a hospital where soldiers recuperated from injuries sustained during training, a chapel for religious services and weddings, a large pool, both for recreation and training in the event of a water landing or combat situation. A library, which was one of the most popular hangouts on base, probably because it was air-conditioned, a real luxury in the early 40s. Sports were the main recreation at Harding Field, including baseball, track, and an assortment of other activities. The They even had their own gym for basketball. And the gym doubled as an auditorium for dances, plays, and fun events. There were many types of aircraft at Harding Field, from fighters to transports. The P-40 Warhawk was one of the most widely used American fighter planes during World War II, both by the United States and its allies. They were heavily armored and fast, with lots of power. The P-39 Air Cobra, also heavily used during the war, had a sleek new design with several innovative changes, like the engine being installed just behind the cockpit. The A-36 Apache was a ground attack dive bomber, an updated version of the P-51 Mustang. They served primarily in North Africa, the Mediterranean, Italy, as well as the Far East. The P-47 Thunderbolt was one of the largest and fastest fighters in World War II. It was like a flying tank. It had 8 50 caliber machine guns, holding 3,400 rounds, and could carry a bomb load of up to 2,500 pounds. You might also find a variety of other planes at Harding Field, such as the B-26 Marauder, BT-13 trainers, and many others. Harding Field was vital to the development of American air power. As part of the 2nd Air Force in the South and Middle West, the base was charged with turning out men and machine into powerful fighting units. It became an assembly line in this pilot factory that produced pilots who fought in combat around the world. Training prepared the men both mentally and physically for what lay ahead. Just down the road, LSU sponsored a prep school for aviation cadets, providing trainees for future pilot instruction. As one might expect, pilots were required to go through long and intense training. Up usually around 5 a.m. with a shower and breakfast in between, they had to be on the flight line by 6:30. By 7 a.m., they took off on their first mission, which could last close to 2 hours. Following their first mission, they were briefed on their second mission of the day and took off around 10:30. Lunch followed, and then 3 hours of ground school and an hour of physical training. During their approximate 3-week stay at Harding Field, the pilot trainees underwent 85 hours of ground training, which included gunnery practice and aircraft identification. Some of their training included water exercises in case a pilot ditched his plane or had a forced water landing. There was all sorts of entertainment on base for the soldiers, from big bands and orchestras for dances with local girls, to putting on their own musicals. They enjoyed an Olympic-sized swimming pool paid for with local dollars. The pool drew quite a crowd when LSU co-eds and WACs took a dip. To burn off some of their energy, the men participated in track, baseball, basketball, and whatever this was. The men created their own stage shows, printed programs, and dressed up in costumes. The era of the big band had taken over the music by the 40s, and there was no lack of performers on the bass. And local girls came out to dance with the boys. Many were bused to Harding Field from the Standard Oil plant.
Standard Oil furnished a bus that would take us to Harding Field to the different dances that they had so that we could dance with the soldiers. And they had a nice band, and we kept their morale up. I mean, they enjoyed the dances as much as we did. Some were better dancers than others. And I'm sure they felt the same way about us. We had a good time.
The men also spent time in downtown Baton Rouge at many nightclubs that have long disappeared. And a number of women fell in love with their soldier boys and married them after the war. Women played a very important role at the base. While civilian women held many jobs at Harding Field and others were members of the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, the first enlisted women arrived in May 1943 as WACs, the Women's Army Air Corps. Enlisted women would now serve the country as mechanics, radio techs, nurses, X-ray technicians, and training instructors. A little over a year later, the first woman was sworn in as a member of the Women's Air Force Service Pilots. WASP, as they were known, had formed a year earlier, but now had come to Harding Field. They flew auxiliary aircraft in the States, allowing more men to fly in combat overseas. Harding Field served the Army well, but at the same time, just to the east off Plank Road, Baton Rouge had its own adjoining private airport. But there were no regularly scheduled flights there until October 14, 1943, when a Douglas DC-3 landed as part of the Delta Airlines fleet. Delta had been formed several years before by Mr. C.E. Falk of Monroe, Louisiana. In 1948, under the U.S. Surplus Act of 1944, Harding Field became a public airport for civilian use and is now served by many of the major carriers. In 1954, Harding Field was renamed Ryan Airport after William Joseph Ryan, a longtime member of the National Aeronautical Association, and in more recent years became the Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport.
With World War II winding down, there is no longer the need for Harding Field to supply the Air Force with pilots, and the base was officially declared inactive March 1st, 1945. And within 5 months, the war was over in both Europe and the South Pacific. The men and women of Harding Field distinguished themselves with highest honors and served their city and country proudly.